thank you very much for coming to this press conference and most welcome from SAHR Bureau members present here. So let me first of all introduce the colleagues I have sitting here. We have from Afghanistan, Mr. Sarwar Mahmood, he is sitting on the right. And then we have Mr. Kamran Arif from Pakistan. We have Mr. Jatin Desai from India. We have Mr. Latif from Maldives, Mohammad Latif from Maldives. And on my left, I have Mr. Ravindra Daniel. And then Khushi Kabir, Ms. Khushi Kabir from Bangladesh, very good friend of mine and a veteran human rights activist. And last but not the least, she is Ms. Tahdi Kuratulain. She is from Sri Lanka. We have another colleague who is still present here in Nepal or Kathmandu, Mr. Lakshan Dias, but then probably for some reason he is not here. To begin with, we have to give you a very kind of sad news because our chairperson, Ms. Hina Jilani, she had to leave Kathmandu because her aunt died this morning, but otherwise she would be here to lead the press conference. So, and Dr. Nimalka Fernando, the co-chair, she couldn't actually attend this conference because she's somewhere engaged for some other commitment. Oh, Lakshan is here, so he's just come. And we also have a member from Nepal who had to go to Hong Kong to attend another, event, Mr. Dinesh, Tripathi. Dinesh Tripathi, he's not here, he was here until yesterday. So we have a written statement which has been probably handed over to you already. So before I read out the statement, there are some comments that we discussed ourselves to be kind of shared with you regarding the region, South Asia. And this is actually, you can say that is being shared with you on behalf of the Share Bureau members present here. So we have a few points to sort of say that militarization, how it affects the democratic governments and authority of elected civilian governance. We all experience that militarization is more and more becoming a very serious concern for all of us. And then terrorism is a great threat in the region, no doubt. Nevertheless, the counter-terrorism measures largely employed by all countries in the region have given rise to perceptions that in fact could lead to support terrorism. They paint terrorists in the light of martyrs. It should be insisted that criminal trials held and these elements are tried rather than disappeared or extrajudicially killed. Otherwise, it gives a very wrong impression to the ordinary people and also internationally. States, in fact, commit offences against the people through the violation of human rights and the disrespect for the rule of law. These kinds of measures not only hamper respect for human rights, but in many ways dilute justice. It also is counterproductive for terrorism itself, because then these people are martyred, their criminal acts never become visible, and they are able to hide behind ideology. We are all witnessing that in all of our countries in the South Asian region, not only here, probably the world over. Every state has to ensure that conflict and natural disaster IDBs have an adequate legal framework, that national disaster management and emergency management systems are catered to the needs of the poorest and the vulnerable, keeping in mind that the women and children and older populations will be the most affected. Cross-border problems are there which are never resolved, so we want our governments to really pay serious attention to that problem. Need for continuous dialogue without any irritants at any level interrupting these dialogues. SAHR's endeavor is that the regional leadership should be able to resolve their disputes rather than look for international patrons and interveners to solve their bilateral problems. So now I will read the written statement which was prepared again by all the Bureau members sitting together, and we are addressing this statement to the SAARC Heads of State by us, members of South Asians for Human Rights, on the occasion of this SAARC Summit meeting at Kathmandu, which is going to be held from 26 to 27 November here. South Asians for Human Rights, which is known also as SAHR, a regional human rights organization meeting at Kathmandu, is committed to promoting and protecting human rights, peace, democracy and justice in all countries of this region. We believe that the situation of human rights and the threat to peace, secularism and democracy are of serious concern to the regional civil society. In particular, the growing impoverishment and inequality and its grievous impact on Dalits, women and indigenous populations are a consequence of adoption of flawed models for economic growth. The region is fraught with conflicts where security is diminishing and government's militaristic response, far from resolving these conflicts, is undermining the rule of law and increasing human insecurity. The number of conflict-induced internally displaced persons and refugees in the region has spiraled. A serious challenge to democracy in the region is the ascendance of religious extremism, intolerance, and the tendency towards majoritarianism. Pluralism and diversity, which are the hallmark of this region, are under threat from such groups, which often enjoy overt or covert patronage from state entities. Women's rights, freedoms, and autonomy are the first to be targeted by extremist groups. Recent years have seen a deterioration in the respect for people's fundamental rights, in particular freedom of assembly and association, freedom of expression, by which we mean freedom of thought, freedom of conscience, freedom of belief, and the right to protest. While the freedom of press remains threatened, the independence of the media is also seriously compromised by the increasing influence and control of vested interests, including the corporate sector, resulting in self-censorship. There's a culture of fear that keeps people in a situation or in a position where they don't really want to open their mouth, they don't want to speak up. Even as gross human rights violations occur in the region, absolute impunity prevails. Institutions of accountability have failed to deliver justice to victims of human rights violations. Despite adverse circumstances, however, human rights defenders and people's movements in the region continue to strive for the respect for human dignity, equality, liberty, and for deepening democracy and securing justice. Instead of acknowledging and encouraging their role, governments in the region are imposing legal and other restrictions on the work and functioning of human rights defenders. Being in Kathmandu provides us an occasion to welcome the SAARC Summit and call upon the South Asian governments to make serious commitments to upholding international standards of human rights and to ensure that national laws and mechanisms adequately and effectively reflect respect for human rights. We urge our governments to use SAARC as a forum to resolve their disputes and make collective efforts to alleviate the sufferings of the people. Unjustified restrictions on visa and lack of adequate means of communication within the region have hampered connectivity, which all the governments keep on actually committing to all the time when they meet and also when they speak in international forums or regional forums. And people-to-people contact. SAARC summits must promptly address and remedy the situation. We call upon the people of South Asia to continue their struggles in the face of difficult circumstances and to aspire towards the creation of a strong regional civil society that can work together towards a South Asia free from conflicts, discrimination, poverty and exclusion. And this statement has been signed by Ms. Hina Jilani and Dr. Nimalka Fernando on behalf of the members of South Asians for Human Rights. Thank you very much. So, as the press conferences go normally, if you please have questions or comments, you could please introduce yourself and ask the questions. My colleagues are all here. You can try to respond.
I'm Gopal Sharma from Reuters.
Yes.
I wonder whether it will be possible for you to name the best country in terms of human rights protection and the worst country in terms of human rights violation in the region.
In South Asia?
Yeah.
But this is a probably very difficult question to really answer because most of our countries are going through similar experience, and the basic factors that we have actually listed here are more or less present in every country of this region. Either in, probably they may vary in degree at a certain point of time, but some other time probably the other country is doing it more. So all of them are following more or less the same pattern of militarization, appeasing the extremist groups, and not being very sort of friendly with the civil society or the citizens of the country, and trying to kind of safeguard their own position when they're in power. And when they're in the opposition, just their main aim is to get to power. So more or less the character is the same, but then I would probably request either Ravi is there, and other people they can probably.
Some kind of examples to give some idea about this extremism, religious kind of extremism, or how do you foresee those sort of threats in our society?
Could you please take the microphone?
You have mentioned about this religious extremism
In the region, yes.
in the region. So do you have any specific examples of
Well, there are many examples from the region, but then I could ask probably our friend Sarwar from Afghanistan to give one or two examples. It's very most pertinent.
As you know, the war in Afghanistan is ongoing, and the basis for the war was the religious extremism. First, it was the struggle of Mujahideen against the Soviet Union, and they get support from the Western world. America supported them, and these groups became more extremist when they came to power in 1992. And a new phenomena of extremism emerged when Taliban came to power. Because of the street war in Afghanistan, decentralization of the state system in Afghanistan, Taliban emerged. The Taliban gets support from the regional states and from international Islamic states. And with the support of Taliban, Al-Qaeda gets strength, and it backlashed on USA. They created first for to struggle against Soviet Union, but after that it had a backlash, and it backfired on America. And now these groups are existing because of the presence of USA forces in Afghanistan. The Taliban became most extreme. They use the most extreme ways for like suicide attacks in Afghanistan. Because before 1992 there was no incidence of suicide attacks. Because the religious extremism, the suicide attacks came a routine in Afghanistan. Every day it's happening, and even in the region, in Pakistan as well. And therefore, nowadays there is the tendency that the Taliban will be re-emerged, and maybe there will be new groups like the group ISIS, Daesh, who are supporting the idea of Daesh in Afghanistan. This is a new kind of extreme groups which are emerging in the region. The reason for that these groups should carry out these attacks because they are legitimizing their attacks because Afghanistan is, they say that Afghanistan is invaded.